It's time to look ahead here to our second bout of the evening, which is the one we've been looking forward to. It's a fight between Darrin Van Horn and Martin Amarillas. Van Horn, the former two-time world champion. Now, he won in two different divisions. In the 156-pound division when he defeated Robert Hines, 168-pound division when he beat Lindell Holmes. However, after beating Holmes and taking the title, he was destroyed by Iran Barkley, knocked out by Barkley, finished off quickly in that fight. Now the question is, can Van Horn come back? Not only can he come back, but can he step up into the 175-pound ranks and be an effective performer at 175 pounds? That is going to be the test that will face him tonight when he takes on Martin Amarillas, who is a tough fighter, not with a great record, but nonetheless a good technician in the ring and a guy who is difficult to fight out of Mexico, a former member of the Olympic team. I did the play-by-play that night along with Joe Goosen. Let's go to that bout now.
And so here we go into round one. There's Darrin Van Horn in the white trunks. Joe, at 23 years old, he's had 51 fights. That's amazing.
Well, that's what happens when you turn pro at 16. And Darrin did turn pro at a very young age in Kentucky. Had a lot of fights in between, was groomed the right way by G.L. Van Horn. His father was a very good trainer, very smart boxing man. He's been around a long time. And just 23 years old with that many fights.
Martin Amarillas starts off by forcing the action, coming forward. And Darrin Van Horn is a fine boxer.
Well, this is something that Darrin Van Horn couldn't do against Iran Barkley, number one. He didn't look like his full concentration was there with all the problems he was having. Right when he stepped in the ring, I noticed that. And the other thing was Barkley was so vicious that night, on top of him so quickly, he never had a chance to get on track. And this is really what he should have been doing against Barkley had he had the opportunity and the chance to do it.
Amarillas, as you can see, looks as though he has some real style to him.
Certainly does, and I'll tell you, he looks a lot trimmer. His body has been transformed a little bit more. He looks a little bit more sleek around the rib cage, and his shoulders look good and strong. So he probably took this fight very seriously and trained very, very hard for it.
Landed a good little body punch in close as he charged at Van Horn. He's had several weeks to prepare for this fight, so it's not surprising that he got into good shape. Grows very quiet in here all of a sudden in round one. Joe, it's like the fans expecting something and getting ready to explode at the first sign. But hardly a murmur from them right now.
Well, right now, it's the first round. It's a feeling out process, and believe me, these two guys will start throwing some bombs after we get into the second, third round here. But right now, it's just a feeling out process, and both of them want to see what each other has as far as speed and power.
Amarillas fought just 3 weeks ago at the Forum. He KO'd Billy Mitras in 6 rounds. Joe, you saw that fight?
I saw that fight.
What was your impression of him?
Well, he looks a lot sharper. That's what I said. It was just 6 weeks ago, and his body looks like he's a lot more tight and a lot better shape. And he had a difficult time with Billy Mitras, but Mitras very awkward. Nice double left hook by Darrin Van Horn. Went from that left hook from the head right down to the body, which is so hard to do, but it's a good trick, and he pulled it off really nice. And Amarillas countered with his own left hook.
So the first round close. Van Horn moving in now and beginning to back Amarillas up a little. Haven't seen much of that so far here in round number one. Van Horn, a two-time world champion. Amarillas trying to fire out with combinations to end round one.
Let's get a little replay of that double left hook, boom, right from the head of the body, and there was the counter hook by Amarillas. Of course, Van Horn was rolling away from it, so a lot less impact than it might have looked at the time. But here we go into round number two.
Amarillas, a pretty good boxer, as you can see so far. He's got a fine left hand, and he's putting it to good use so far. He landed that good left hook that Joe was talking about. And Van Horn, probably not familiar with the opponent, just trying to adjust now to what he's got in front of him.
And I'm sure Darrin Van Horn's a little surprised at how big this guy is, Amarillas. He is a big light heavyweight at 6'2". But he just, when he came in at Van Horn, who just caught Amarillas with a little left hook off the glove, but he put a little pressure on Van Horn earlier in the round with a good right-hand left hook. And I'm sure Van Horn felt those punches because he's a strong-looking guy, Amarillas.
Amarillas did fight Anthony Hembrick, who would be a future opponent here of Van Horn, as we were talking about, and Hembrick stopped him with cuts. They fought in Jakarta, Indonesia. I asked him if he was nervous about this fight. He said, no, not at all. Not really. He was nervous before the Olympic Games, but that's been about it. And he really does not fear the punch of Darrin Van Horn.
Well, and you can almost sense that at the way he's walking right in Van Horn, and landed a good little short right hand on Darrin just then. Van Horn has really got to get a stiffer and steadier jab going to keep Amarillas off of him and work a little body shots. Slow him down a little, because Amarillas is anxious to get in like that on Van Horn.
So we've seen some surprising things going on so far tonight here at the Country Club in Reseda. And so far, an excellent account of himself being given by Martin Amarillas against Darrin Van Horn with a record of 48-3. And believe me, he has only been defeated by outstanding boxers, just two men, Gianfranco Rossi and Iran Barkley.
And you know you've got to respect the power of Darrin Van Horn. When he fought Lindell Holmes, so what I really felt was one of the tougher guys in that 168-pound division, he stopped Lindell Holmes with a body shot.
Yeah, and he really dropped him. He really dropped him.
It was one of the most vicious body shots I had ever seen, and just stretched him out like he had been hit on the chin. Here you got Van Horn, who's really continuing to pressure Amarillas right now, and that may be a better tactic for him, backing up Amarillas, is you give this guy too much room to come in and like that, to come in and put pressure on you, and you might be asking for a little bit of trouble, because that's the way Amarillas likes to work. He likes to come right at you. All right, and we're coming to the end of the round here. For the start of round 3 here at the Country Club on Prime Network. Van Horn, Darrin Van Horn and Martin Amarillas.
What would you expect now out of Darrin Van Horn? Do you expect him to try to pick up the pace?
Well, you know, as we saw at the last part of that second round there, he was doing, and Amarillas backing up Van Horn, exactly the point I was making early in the round. It looked like Van Horn is going to fare a little bit better if he pressures Amarillas, because Amarillas doesn't look comfortable going back and punching as much as he does coming forward. And you saw when Van Horn backed up there, he got hit with a good 3-punch combination.
Come on, Darrin, you got to walk him down. Get in there and work with him.
Van Horn, as I mentioned, out of the University of Kentucky, already talking about going to law school and that type of thing.
Trying to give fighters a bad name or something. I don't know what he's trying to do.
And he's a broadcasting major. He's done some TV work, in fact, in Kentucky.
Well, I'm going to put an end to that real quick. He's got a chance in heck of coming after my job. Nice little right hand, just missed by Van Horn. If those start landing, Amarillas could be in trouble. But I'll tell you, Amarillas, you got to give him a lot of credit. He was an Olympic member for the 1988 Mexican Olympic team, so you know he's a qualified fighter. And even though his record isn't the greatest, he really is a classic fighter and does a lot of good things here, and he looks prepared. So let's see how far he can take this against Van Horn.
Well, he landed a pretty good combination there, but for the 30 seconds before that, Van Horn was getting busier and busier by the second, it seemed.
But he's going to be busy and sustain that attack and really be a little bit more accurate. He's been falling a little bit short with his right hand, and I'm sure he'd like to be able to find the range, and he's going to do it off that jab right there. But there goes Amarillas. Good left hook right hand right on the chin of Darrin Van Horn.
Didn't really hurt him, but it forced him backwards a couple of feet.
Well, it got his attention, but you take 6, 7, 8, 9 of those over the course of a fight, and you won't have to worry about getting your attention, just getting up off the mat. Those catch up to you after a while. Amarillas is really surprising. I'm sure Darrin Van Horn has got to be asking himself, this guy doesn't seem much like a 50-50 fighter like his record shows.
That's right, a 10-7 record, but this is one of those chance of a lifetime things, Joe, and Amarillas certainly is ready.
That's right. You can never underestimate a guy, and Darrin Van Horn's the first one to tell you that. He just got caught with a little left hook himself. Both of them traded hooks, and I think Van Horn may have gotten the worst of that left hook.
Good jab on the face by Amarillas.
Well, here Van Horn went through a right uppercut to the body. At the same time, had his left hand down. Amarillas flipped him with a short right hand over the top.
And there's Darrin Van Horn going back to his corner. And his dad, G.L. Van Horn, with him in the corner. What do you think, Joe, in your mind about family members being in the corner? Of course, you guys have got a situation which we saw earlier with your nephew and father and son type thing. Sometimes that doesn't always work out.
No, but sometimes it doesn't work out when you... Well, we got this open hand.
Look here. When you come with the right, come over here. When you come with the left, just take your head with you. Come here. You stand up in the middle, and bounce. Stay down low. Let's just start cranking them up. Let's put the motherfucker in the fist fight.
Okay, a little replay here. Van Horn, both of them trading the hooks, and there's the one that Van Horn ran into, and Amarillas caught high on the head. And G.L. Van Horn was, speaking of father and son combo here, was telling Darrin that he's got to what he's got to do is shift his head to the side of the punch where the punch is going. Left hook, shift your head down to the right. Right hand, shift your head down to the left. This way, taking your head out of the middle so you don't get countered.
We're into round 4, and Joe, I'll let you expound, if you would, on that subject that we brought up before we listened to G.L. there in the corner. The father and son thing in the corner, is it a good thing? Because sometimes it seems to work out bad for fighters.
Well, yeah, and you can name the fighters. I mean, they pop to my mind right now. Jerry Quarry had a rough go with his father. Of course, Sean and Pat O'Grady had a great relationship in the corner. Good left hand by Darrin Van Horn. You can go on and on. There are quite a bit of it, but it depends on the father and the son. GL and Darrin Van Horn get along beautifully. Roy Jones Jr., of course, and his father had the falling out. So sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. I'm not opposed to it, and I'm not in favor of it. I just say let them be, and if it works, great. I'm happy for them. But to finalize it, there's a lot of trainers that aren't related to their fighters that have falling out. So, how do you explain it?
I think we should point out one thing, too, is that Candelario Amarillas is in his, the father of...
That's right.
is in Martin's corner.
As long as cool heads prevail in the corner, I think it's just fine. And good right hand.
Yes, it was. Right hand, and that one backed up Amarillas. He definitely felt that punch, and Van Horn now trying to follow up on it, and going to the body a little bit to follow up on it.
Ooh, and Darrin just slipped a good counter right hand, but didn't slip that one, rolled with it from Amarillas. But Amarillas is playing a little possum here, went into a little shell, and then came out. Look at this combination he's coming out with in good short jabs.
Landed a short little left hook to the head and then went down to the body. So Amarillas was shaken up momentarily, but came right back showing good recuperative powers.
And I think probably the most damage came to Amarillas from that right hand to the body that he took from Darrin Van Horn. And Van Horn should be throwing that more often, just like he did there. Because Amarillas has got a lot of spunk right now. He's got a lot of, and a good counter right hand over the jab of Darrin Van Horn. He's got to keep that chin tucked in his shoulder and left hand up to avoid that. Ooh.
Nice right hand by Darrin Van Horn.
Countered off a left hook to the body from Amarillas.
Not many of Darrin's punches have landed flush so far.
No, but he's starting to find the mark a little bit better, as well as Amarillas. As the more that Van Horn opens up, the better it is for Amarillas, because he's going to leave openings.
And that means that this fight is picking up in action,
exactly,
too.
just like we had said. And right now, Van Horn's starting to press the issue. He just had to figure out Amarillas a little bit, and he's starting to get to him somewhat.
He's finding the range, and no question about it, Joe. You're absolutely right. You see it there again. He landed the left hook and coming back to the body again. Mixing up his attack now is Darrin Van Horn.
What I love about Darrin Van Horn, once he gets going, even though he dropped his left hand there and took a short right hand from Amarillas, what I love about Van Horn is his tenacity. It was exactly in that fight against Lindell Holmes. He just pursued Holmes, even though Holmes was giving him a lot of trouble, and finally stopped him with that body shot. He's got guts, for 5 fighters.
And a nice right hand by Van Horn just before the bell sounded. We go back into the corner with Martin Amarillas and his dad, Candelario. All right, giving him the old fan treatment. It is warm, as we mentioned, here in the country club in Reseda. But they have to be happy with what they'd had up till maybe the last minute and a half of that round when Darrin Van Horn, Joe, finally seemed to find the range.
Yeah, and I think Darrin Van Horn is pulling these rounds out by being a little bit more active, but it looks like Amarillas is in each of these rounds and considerably dangerous still. And here's that little replay of Van Horn throwing that flurry with that right hand sneaking through, left hook, and there was the final right hand that finally got through. His tenacity paid off with those 6-7 punches. There's a little left hook to the body from Amarillas, and there's that counter right hand over the top because of it. That's why going to the body early is real dangerous, because that man's usually sharp enough to counter you if you're pulling back after that body shot.
This is round 5. You're watching Prime Championship Boxing, and the former champion in action tonight is Darrin Van Horn in the white trunks. 2-time world champion at both 154 and 168-pound weight categories in the IBF. Came out with a very strong round 4. Martin Amarillas in the black trunks.
Good left hook right over the top. One of the rules of thumb there that you teach in the boxing gym, when you throw that right hand to the body, step out to your right, or step back with a jab, but don't just pull up after a body shot.
Darrin really controlling the action now, Joe, and Amarillas has not thrown many shots in this round. He's just been basically backing away, trying to box. And Van Horn controlling the action.
Questionable body shot there. Was a little bit low. Van Horn just shakes it off, and Lou Moret, the referee, doesn't really acknowledge it, but if you saw it happen again, I'm sure he'd tell him to keep the punches up. A little good right hand just grazing, left hook from Amarillas. His punches aren't landing solidly, but they are coming close to finding their mark. I still think Van Horn, when he pressures Amarillas, is when he really does his best. So you like that?
Neither man has been down, neither man marked so far. Van Horn's punches are heavier. Amarillas in the first 3 rounds enjoyed some success. Again, he was in every round. That's not to say he was beating up Darrin Van Horn by any means, but he was in there.
He's a skilled fighter with 2 arms, 2 legs like Van Horn, and you know he's going to get his shots in. This is not just some guy they put into with Van Horn to make Van Horn look good. They wanted to give Van Horn some work and to give him some tough competition, and this guy's got an opportunity to win this fight if he tries hard just like this and keeps punching like that.
Now he's getting busier here at the end as we near the end of the round. Right hand lead to the body tried by Van Horn without success. They're yelling Kentucky from his corner, which I have to think is probably a signal for some type of punch.
Maybe
there's a good right hand to the body.
I don't know if it meant they were coming towards the end of the round to pick it up, but that may have been their sign. A little flashback here to round 5. Van Horn lead right hand landed flush, and that was one of his better punches in that round. Here's Van Horn stepping up the action. Really, he's stepping into Amarillas a lot, which I think is going to serve him better, and that's probably what G.L. Van Horn saw in the corner, is telling his son to pressure Amarillas more, because he's doing better when he's going forward.
All right, as Van Horn and Amarillas mix it up here in round 6, let's check Joe's scorecard and see how the fight's going according to Joe Goosey.
Well, I've got Van Horn ahead, but not real comfortably. Amarillas is in each and every one of these rounds, but I just think that the experience of Van Horn, and he's a little bit busier in landing the cleaner shots, has been winning them these rounds.
Darrin showing a little upper body movement there before he threw that punch.
Well, he's quite good at that. He's a real slippery fighter. You got to give him a lot of credit. He's very cagey. He's had a lot of experience, and he's taught a lot of the savvy, tricky moves in the ring.
Yes, he stepped back there, Joe, and landed a nice right uppercut to the body.
Amarillas answered back with a little jab of his own.
Van Horn winning the 154-pound title, beating Robert Hines for that. 168-pound title in the fight that that Joe referred to earlier with the knockout of Lindell Holmes with a body punch. And now the two mix it up. Right hand from long range by Amarillas. And now Van Horn coming on.
Amarillas' corner really urging Martin Amarillas to step up the pace and come forward because they figure he's doing better when he's coming forward. And waving the white towel, trying to get him to put pressure on Van Horn. Left hook by Van Horn, a good body shot.
Van Horn does some nice work to the body, especially with that right hand.
I'm sure something that he and his father are going to look at when they watch these tapes is that Darrin's popping that head up after he finishes a body shot, which can be very dangerous. And it's, good right hand to the body by Van Horn. And that's exactly what Barkley caught him with. They had a few exchanges in the middle. Van Horn popped the head up and got clipped with a great left hook early on.
Amarillas down momentarily. They just quickly wipe our gloves off. Of course, no knockdown.
Well, as you look at the monitor here, you can see the blood coming down the left side of Amarillas. There might have been a clash of heads when they traded
right hand by Van Horn. Snuck that right hand in a short one.
It was, and right on that cut, and it's, I can't really see exactly where it is. It looks like on the eyebrow.
Amarillas now beginning to get a little the worse for wear as Van Horn's experience and superior power beginning to tell. Another right hand, Van Horn.
Well, he's just, Van Horn is just all motion in that one. Very good.
And the cut looks to be fairly bad as the blood was coming down pretty good. Side of the face. Get a shot of it right there.
Here's the thing that, if you're a corner man, here's the thing that you like about that cut. It's on the side of the eye. Therefore, the blood, if it drips, it's going to come off to the side, not over the eyebrow where it's going to come right into your eye and blind you. So he's lucky there that it's on the side of the eye.
Of course, that could open further, Joe, and cause him some real problems.
Very true.
Van Horn, I thought Joe really came on in that round.
Here we go. Here's Van Horn slipping the jab, coming over with that right hand. That wobbled Amarillas for a second there. Steps off to the side, threw an uppercut after that. Here we go again. This may be a different look at it, but no, nothing there. That's when they were frozen in time.
Looks like a fairly deep cut there, Joe.
Yeah, it does. It looks like it's running the length of the eyelid. And I'll tell you what, I wouldn't be surprised if this thing bleeds or gets any worse, that Dr. Robert Carnes, the ringside physician, would stop this fight because it's in a terrible position, one that could surely injure the eye even more on the eyelid.
And Horn moving forward, and certainly Amarillas has got to be aware now of that blood flow that he had in that last round.
Well, Amarillas is keeping that left hand exceptionally high. If you look right there, guarding that eye, and Van Horn, if he's smart, he's going to go after it. Try to open that up a little bit, and that'll stop the fight and get him out of this one, because it's no cakewalk, no walk in the park here against Martin Amarillas for Darrin Van Horn.
Now, in this situation, what's the best thing for Amarillas to do here, Joe? And knowing that he might be fighting on borrowed time here, especially with that eye.
Exactly. Well, you know, it's a 10-round fight. We're almost 3/4 through the fight. Amarillas should really step up the pace and do what Van Horn doesn't want him to do, and that's back him up. Amarillas is backing up to fighting too passive of a fight. He's not going to be able to counter-punch and win this fight. He's going to have to go in, pull his way into Van Horn, and try to, lock horns and really just take him out. But at this point, it's very doubtful he's just going to beat him by boxing him and counter-punching him. If you see another scenario, let me in on it. Rich? I mean, that's the way I'm looking at it from a cornerman standpoint.
Well, a pretty good combination landed there by Amarillas, but again, no effect at all on Van Horn. He glanced 3 punches off him, but Darrin took those with ease. Good right hand, Van Horn. And an answering right hand by Amarillas.
It certainly was. Amarillas, as a matter of fact, just landed a good right hand, and I don't know what Van Horn was looking at there. He looked down and away. Nice jab, step to the side with an uppercut. Amarillas is putting some nice stuff together this round. Another good right hand off of Van Horn.
I think he's surprising Darrin Van Horn a little bit in this round.
Well, that cut is looking worse and worse. It's open again, and here goes Van Horn.
Yeah, backing up against the ropes. He landed a right hand right on it. And there's another right hand by Van Horn. That right hand beginning to find a home now on the left side of the face of Martin Amarillas. Van Horn picking it up and looking for that punch. But here comes Amarillas firing back. Hard right hand by Van Horn. That one stunned Amarillas. There's another right hand, and Amarillas in some difficulty.
Beautiful right hand, really a tremendous combination put together by Martin Amarillas, and a short right hand, good left hand landed by Amarillas. This is definitely his best round for Amarillas. He's landed some solid shots on Van Horn.
The two have been exchanging punches. What a round. Round 7 here at the Country Club. Darrin Van Horn, Martin Amarillas, hammer and tong. The two really went after each other.
Well, there's part of the action here for that last round, of course. The actions spoke right there. It was a torrid round. Here's that counter short right hand off of Darrin Van Horn's lead right hand from Amarillas.
We are into round 8 now at the Country Club in Reseda, and Martin Amarillas has given a fine account of himself in this fight. He's probably trailing Darrin Van Horn in this fight, but nonetheless, I think he's stepping forward as someone who needs to be dealt with. Left hand by Amarillas. Caught Van Horn off balance momentarily.
The crowd saw that right uppercut, and it was a little low by Amarillas there. You got a few boos from the crowd, but right now Van Horn really is comfortably ahead, and Amarillas is the one who really has to force the action here and do something to either win some more rounds or win some rounds, period, or stop Van Horn, because right now, to me, Van Horn is way ahead on points, and we're in the, 8th, 9th, and 10th round, 3 rounds left.
Van Horn with a good right uppercut to the body, and there's a crossing left hand by, there's that right to the body, and he really punches nicely downstairs with that right. His dad told him, you've got to work harder, Darrin. This guy cannot hurt you.
I'll tell you, Amarillas is coming very close to landing some short shots when Van Horn is popping his head up in the middle. I'm sure his dad doesn't like to see it.
And he's really bleeding, Joe, and I'm going to be surprised if they don't at least have the doctors take a look at this cut before too long, because he's bleeding fairly heavily now. And Van Horn coming on real good now.
What Amarillas isn't doing that the doctors look for when they come in and check it, is he wiping the blood away? Is he blinking? Is he showing signs that it's bothering him? Right now, the blood is dripping more on the side.
We're going to have the doctor come in now. Here comes Dr. Robert Carnes into the ring to check the eye.
But you see, he's got clear vision. He can see that blood is just around to the side. The only reason they'd stop it if it's in the eyelid and it has a chance of maybe hurting the eyeball itself.
Or if it's extremely deep.
Right. There he's letting it go on.
And he says, let it go.
That must have been up towards the eyebrow a little bit more, where it's less dangerous, and it wasn't really the blood was not getting in Martin Amarillas' eye, which is the danger, because then you lose your vision completely.
Little left hand by Amarillas, but without the power needed to keep Van Horn off of him. Van Horn pulls him to the rope.
It was a nice little move, straight right hand, step to the side, dropped an uppercut off of Amarillas, and just missed with that one.
He actually tripled up on that right hand.
Yes. Well, you ask yourself if a father and son combination worked out well. I mean, out of 50-something fights, he's got 3 losses to two credible world champions. So in this case, it worked out well. And GL's taught Darrin Van Horn a lot of good stuff because he's got some beautiful moves.
Coming to the end of the round now.
Oh, good right hand by Van Horn.
Round 9 at the Country Club in Reseda, California. Rich Morata along with Joe Goosen. We are ringside watching this 175-pound battle between Darrin Van Horn, 2-time world champion in the white trunks, and Martin Amarillas, a youngster with only 17 pro bouts, hit badly over or actually more to the side of the left eye, but giving a good account of himself in this fight tonight.
I don't think he's winning many of the rounds, Rich, but definitely making a good account and landing his own shots, having Darrin Van Horn giving him a lot of respect. Because Van Horn is certainly by no means just throwing caution to win. He's being very picky and choosy about what he's doing. Left uppercut by Amarillas, that landed. They've done a wonderful job in the corner on that eye of Amarillas because they really stem the flow of blood. And by all means, that cut should be bleeding a lot more profusely than it is.
Left hook by Van Horn up high on the side of Amarillas' head, and he took it very well. Answering back with a couple of counter rights is Martin Amarillas.
Look at that head movement by Van Horn, and that's really posed a lot of problems to Amarillas on the inside. Van Horn will land a couple shots. Amarillas will throw 5 or 6 punches. They'll all go over Darrin's head.
It's always fun to watch a kid like Amarillas because there's no quit in him.
No, very, very little quit in Martin Amarillas. In fact, I've never seen him quit. He's never been stopped by a knockout before, so he takes a good punch and keeps on coming back. His one curse has been that he cuts.
He has been busted up a lot in fights. It's been his history, and it's proven so again tonight. By the same token, when a guy is accustomed to that, it probably won't bother him as bad when it happens.
Yeah, but you know, there's one thing, Rich. What happens is a fighter always dreads. Even if they cut all the time, they dread the fact that they may get cut again that night. Because it's psychologically damaging, if nothing else. Believe me, when I prepare my cut medicine when we're going into a fight, I keep that off to the side. I don't even let my fighters see me preparing cut medicine as if to say, you might get cut tonight. I keep that all hush-hush and behind closed doors.
Well, you're a psychological genius. You don't about that.
I'm just a psycho genius.
This might be more accurate.
Well, Martin's hands coming down a little bit low. Darrin Van Horn's punch is really starting to catch up. That body work, those right hands to the body is, I think, slowing Martin back. He looks hesitant a little bit, and he looks like he's taking a few punches.
Amarillas trying to finish with a flourish here in round number 9. But Van Horn discouraged with the left hand, but then Amarillas right back again. And they exchange shots to end a good round 9. Good exchange of punches, both guys getting theirs home. And Van Horn goes back to his corner, sits on the stool. Doesn't look the least bit fatigued.
His face is clean.
Getting a little spray of water from his cornerman and his dad, G.L. Van Horn, in front of him.
That's an ammonia mix in there. No, I'm just kidding you, Rich.
What?
That's actually glass cleaner that they're putting on.
I see. They're across the way, still working on that cut while at the same time giving him instructions. Joe, action from the last round.
Pardon me, Rich?
This is
There
from
we
the
go.
last round.
Right, exactly that left hook. That was off the counter right hand by Amarillas. The left hook thrown by Darrin Van Horn. Really been a staple of his all night tonight.
Walking backwards if you get in the car.
Let's hear it for both Martin Amarillas and Darrin Van Horn. This is the 10th and final round.
All right, here we go. 10th and final round now between Darrin Van Horn in the white trunks, Martin Amarillas in the black trunks. And Joe, let's take a look at how you've got the fight scored here so far.
Well, let's put it up on the board. 89-83 for Van Horn. I really have him a runaway with 1 round even, the 3rd round, and the 7th round in Amarillas' favor. I thought that was the only round that he won. He landed some good, solid, hard shots, but right now it's all Van Horn, and he's really, you know, at this point, 10th round, he's got the fight a lock, and he's still trying to make something happen, looking for a knockout, looking for good punches to land, which you got to like in Van Horn.
Well, Van Horn had to take a right hand there from Amarillas, but he rolled with the punch.
That's right.
Very well.
Very, very astute observation there, Rich Murata.
Oh, I've been listening to you.
Well, it was. And that's something difficult for a lot of fighters to learn, is to roll away from a punch. It's not really the most natural thing to do, to tell you the truth.
Now Van Horn opening up. Trying to get Amarillas backed up into the ropes if he can. Interesting thing, though, Amarillas, when he's been backed up against the ropes, he's been willing to exchange with Van Horn. And here comes Martin now. Ooh, hard right hand by Van Horn. Van Horn, the harder puncher of the two.
Just a much snappier punch. Comes out with a lot more velocity. Amarillas has got a good snappy punch, but they don't have that real fast quickness to them, and that's where Van Horn has got it over. A good left hook to the body.
Tape is loose on the left glove of Darrin Van Horn. May have to to get that cut and redone here.
I'm sure Lou Moret, the referee, the fine referee from California, sees it. He's just letting it go at this point until there's a break in the action.
Van Horn with a good left hook. Action has been real brisk in these last 4 rounds.
It's been a heck of a pace for these two big guys here. And who knows, Darrin Van Horn may definitely want to stay back down at 68 if the thought of meeting big monsters like this at 175 pounds who are hard to knock out when you move up in weight. And I think 68 is a little bit better suited for Darrin. He's still a growing boy, and who knows, in a couple more years, when he's 25, 26, he may grow into the light heavyweight division.
Backs Amarillas up into the ropes, and now Amarillas stumbles back across the ring, and finally may be wearing out.
Look at the condition of Van Horn. He's not even breathing hard, and he just ran into a little right hand. But fine conditioning on Van Horn's part.
Van Horn trying to finish with a flurry, and so is Amarillas. Amarillas refusing to quit. Coming on hard here at the end of round 10. Fans enjoying the action here as this fight winds down. There's the bell. That's the end of the round and the end of the fight. Fans, many of them standing here at Tony Longball's Country Club in Reseda.
Well, as you can see, it was a difficult bout for Darrin Van Horn, the former 2-time world champion, was pressed to the very limit by Martin Amarillas, but Van Horn did get the decision over Amarillas, so he moves on. However, I think after seeing that fight, you would have to agree there's a question mark about Darrin Van Horn's future at 175 pounds. Perhaps he would be more effective as a 168-pound campaigner.